Hi, I'm your host Vasco Duarte. Welcome to the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, where we share tips and tricks from Scrum Masters around the world. Every day, we bring you inspiring answers to important questions that all Scrum Masters face day after day. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Wednesday episode, the Leading Change episode this week with Rasmus Lund-Jensen. Hi, Rasmus. Welcome back.
Hi. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So Wednesday, Leading Change. We want you to tell us a story that you went through, a change process that you were part of. And then for us, the important thing here is to really focus on the tools, the tips, the tricks, the techniques you learned during that change process that you still carry with you and apply today.
All right. So on Monday, in the Monday episode, we talked about this transformation where there was a failure story. And the setting here is actually some of the learnings or the tools and practices we developed based on that failure. And those are some of the practices that I really look at today and try to incorporate when I'm on a new change task or challenge. So one of the key parts from the Monday story was this part about communicating or having a broken telephone. So when we are doing a big change, so we're doing a transformation, it's something we invest in and we ask people to invest. And it's something that's difficult because we are invested in how we're doing things already. So when people ask us to do something else, we want to know why. So what often happens is that people get nervous, especially if they don't hear a lot because of why, because they need to fill in those gaps themselves. And they do that to protect themselves. And to protect themselves, they imagine the worst thing possible. So what we found was incredibly powerful was to have a high frequency of engagement and communication about the change. And not necessarily say, here we're going to talk about change, but more here we're going to talk about the world we are in. And change is a part of that. So after a year, we introduced these once a week where the head of the area would communicate what's going on, what's the direction we are going in, what are our current priorities, and what is it that we know and what is it acknowledged what we don't know. Our style was to communicate, to involve instead of to inform, and communicate intentions instead of decisions.
What do you mean by that? Give us an example.
So we communicate earlier on when there is a challenge that, for instance, upper management is beginning to talk about. We communicate that. So, for instance, we can communicate, we see an issue with this platform. This is the kind of impact it's having on us. We don't know yet how we're going to address this, but this is on our agenda right now. Then a week later, they might come back and say, all right, last time we talked about this challenge. This time we are actually going into a more solution kind of mode. We are seeing these two approaches to the challenge. We are yet undecided. We haven't decided yet. This gives people the opportunity to contribute, to chip in. And when a final decision is being made, they have heard the story leading up to it. So my intention was to have town halls, as we called them. That's boring, short and boring, because there's nothing new. It's just slight nuances on something we knew already. Because what happened earlier.
So it's kind of slowly introducing change by sharing, I'm going to use a term that I need to explain, but by sharing the management conversation, right? And by conversation, I mean like what they are talking about, the challenges they see, just like you put it.
Yeah.
Because there's always a conversation going on.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is this conversation, as it goes on, is important for the rest of the organization to listen to.
I believe so, yes. And the reason for that is earlier, when there was just a town hall, a gathering of the area every 3 months or 6 months, people would get nervous leading up to that. Because what are they going to communicate now? What is the big change? Who's going to move where? All that kind of stuff. And then they're trying to cram in the full story the why, the what, the how, but people are listening for the how, but that comes at the end. So the why and the what, I don't listen to that because I'm just listening in on what does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? And it's also acknowledging that management, if we call them that, it's also been a process for them. And it's not rational beings, 100% rational beings they're working with. It's humans, and they need time to digest if things are going to be different.
And also to understand the context, right? Like you said, digest, which I think is the right word here, but it's digest in a very specific way, which is to kind of be aware that something is going on, and also to be clear that there's no decision, and maybe there won't be. It might be that we drop this because we don't know if this is yet relevant. But then when it becomes relevant, then we talk about, possible solutions and kind of share that process in short and boring town halls, as you described it. I love that description, because then if they become boring, then they become real communication, right? It's not about, oh my God, are they going to fire everybody, right? Because that's what everybody thinks. Like if there's something out of the usual, top management is coming, quote unquote, down and talking to us, there must be something serious going on, right?
Yeah, because that's what happens when they do that.
And we've all experienced it.
Yeah. I think the other important part is if you're responsible for the change or you are facilitating the change, when we're working with a Scrum team, we have the retrospective, we have the planning, we have the different events where we can talk about the change and we can highlight what is it we're trying to do different. What are the things we would like to do more? What are the things we would like to do less? But when you become when it's a broader change, where are those events? So that's something, at least I found out, I need that in order to be effective, because we need to have a space where we can say the positive reinforcement. This is what we would like to do more of. Or these are some of the examples of things we would like to avoid with this change. Otherwise, it's just, well, are we done yet with this change? I haven't heard about it for a while. Yeah. It's summer, everything. It's new buzzwords after summer, right?
Yeah, after the conference season.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great point. Like it's almost like building the opportunity for retrospecting into the change process, right? It's like, okay, we have our team retrospectives, but we should have our change retrospective as well. Like what's going on? What does it mean? What do we want to do more of? What do we want to drop or do less of? That's a great point.
And maybe not even call it a retrospective. Just have a conversation and higher frequency, and then make sure that it's valuable. Fist of 5 at the end and improve.
So you said fist of 5 at the end. Like, what's your thought behind that technique? Why would you employ that in a conversation about what to do more of and less of?
So here we're talking about the communication from top management, you could say, but we're not doing it for them. We're doing it for those joining, for those working in the area. So it's their reaction to the involvement they are in the conversation and their ability to voice their concerns. That's what they give feedback on.
And the feedback, the fist of 5, it would be, can you give an example of a question that you would ask at the end of that session?
For instance, it could be the kind of information, the kind of involvement, the kind of the decisions or decisions to be involvement. How are we hitting that in terms of what you need to know to be working efficiently? So what's the sort of involvement you would like to have, and are we hitting that? So 1 to 5, 1, this is totally irrelevant for me and it's wasting 15 minutes of my time. Or 5, this is making me able to succeed better in being a part of this company. And then what's the one sentence that helps us guide towards a higher score?
That's a great point, because that's an immediate feedback. It's like the change is what we are delivering from top management, and the fist of 5 is like immediate customer feedback, right? Like the organization is giving that feedback as the change goes on.
Exactly.
Lovely idea. Thank you for sharing that, Rasmus.
You're welcome.
Leading change is one of the core skills we must acquire, but it is only one of the steps towards our success as Scrum Masters. Tomorrow, on Success Thursday, we will talk about how to define success for the Scrum Master role. We'll cover tips on how to measure your way to that position, and most importantly, how to develop that focus on continuous improvement that is as important for Scrum Masters as it is for teams. See you tomorrow. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.